Hey everyone, welcome to Strange Stories, where we explore near-death experiences and supernatural stories from people who've had a glimpse of the other side. If you enjoy our content, please consider liking the video and subscribing to our channel. Without further ado, let's get to the story of the day. I'll start by describing who I was before my encounter and how I came to my metamorphosis. I was in bad shape in February 2018. Most people thought I was normal, perhaps cynical and wry, but only my wife understood how miserable and physically abused I'd been for many years. I'd been working on a capstone project in my career for far too long, and I wasn't feeling great about myself or my prospects as a designer or construction worker. There was not a single day that I did not consider suicide. I was either too scared to go or dissatisfied with the circumstances of my exit. I wanted it to be spotless. I never found out if I was capable of carrying it out. I wanted to be alone on the evening of February 18th, 2018. It was my birthday, and I had reached the pinnacle of my social isolation. My wife's friends, who I now consider to be my friends, invited us to their home for a movie night. I was reluctant to go. Movie night was becoming a regular occurrence for these other individuals, but I was growing increasingly antisocial. I am still, but I'm working on it. It is one of the things I've learned from my experience. I became enraged because I didn't want to go, and I drove away without a destination. My wife went to the party, and I began receiving text messages inviting me to join them. I told them to leave me alone and parked somewhere no one would notice. I had a sleeping bag in the car, so I slept alone there. The sun was shining brightly when I awoke in the morning, and it was a gorgeous February day, but something was extremely wrong with me. I was nauseated and shaking uncontrollably. I was running a fever. My automobile refused to start. I had exhausted the battery overnight by listening to the radio. Older vehicles could listen to the radio all day. The latest touchscreens on car radios use battery power. Learning experience. I called my wife, who arrived to pick me up. I was convulsing so violently that I couldn't tell her where I was. When I got home, I collapsed on the living room couch with a pail to puke in, thinking I had the flu. If I got the flu, it wasn't the common kind. I practically evacuated my entire digestive system for several days, despite being unable to eat or drink anything, not even ice chips. I was suffering from a fever, which caused me to lose control of my body temperature. My temperature would drop to normal and then rise to 103 plus within an hour. I alternated between writhing in a feverish sweat on the couch and contracting over the toilet with dry heaves and diarrhea. There's no stuffy nose, nasal congestion, or chest tightness. I was fatigued and very weak by February 22nd. I was dehydrated beyond thirsty, beyond what is normal for life. I wasn't getting better, and I knew you couldn't be that dehydrated without dying. My wife was pleading with me to go to the hospital. But I knew I'd wind up in the ICU and would sooner die than spend massive medical expenditures. We have fantastic insurance, but any trip to the ICU costs $35,000, which is still more money than I wanted to pay for a vert death. That nightfall, everything appeared to be usual around here. When I retreated from the couch to the restroom for the final time, my wife and daughter were preparing dinner. The contractions wouldn't stop, and I realized I was about to die. I crept outside to the end of my driveway and into my side yard. I didn't want whatever mess was made when my muscles relaxed to happen inside the home or on the street. For some reason, I was actually aware of this fact, and it required all of my strength to move what was becoming my corpse to the location of my experience. Once there, I continued to get contractions from my core until I was forced to submit. I don't care if I live or die. I just want this pain to cease, I told myself. Everything shifted at that very instant, and I was no longer in pain. I recognized I was dead, but it didn't frighten me. It was more of a, okay, so what happens next type of situation. It was pitch black, and I was motionless. I had the sensation of being suspended in a viscous fluid, like a piece of fruit in a jello mold. There was no feeling of time or distance in this realm. I'm claustrophobic, but I was strangely serene and tolerant of my static state. Then there was a reddish light in the darkness. and I felt comparable to when your barefoot gets stuck in mud and you have to get it out. That's how it felt, but in every cell in my body. I'd describe the sensation as uncomfortable but not painful, more woozy, like slowly peeling a band-aid of a scabbed-over lesion. I could see my garage door for a split second before a phantasmagoria formed and I moved into the visual layer that had created between the garage door and my corpse, or point of perspective. I didn't see my body. I was heading away from it, directly towards the void or portal that had appeared in front of me. When it happened, I found myself in an apparent infinite emptiness. It looked like space, or if you were lucky enough to be out in the high desert on a bright new moonlight. Vast, boundless, black. A very bright white light in the field of view to my right and far out in the distance had the quality of agency, even though it did not move while I was there. It seemed to have free will. I'm not sure if I communicated with it. If it did, I'm not sure how yet. I may find out in time, and perhaps its influence is subtle, parcelled yet ongoing, both fleeting and infinite. One thing I've noticed about this experience is that I'm learning more from it every day. A creature that I couldn't easily describe was to my left and close to me in front of me. It had an abstract shape that changed all the time. The best way I can describe it is it's a blend of three things. To depict the movement, envision thin static fabric in a strong breeze, similar to how the surface of a flag changes in the wind. The fluid waves are continuous, slightly erratic, and not flapping. It was also at least three-dimensional. It wasn't merely a reflection or a surface. It was possible that it was a hologram. Aside from the hues, this entity might be graphically portrayed with a well-designed hologram software. It would be tough to represent emotionally. I'm not sure what it does, but it does have one that I'm aware of. The physical appearance was sponge-like, yet it was made up of many fibers of an unknown translucent, obviously living material. This entity was also psychoactive. The hues are unlike anything I've ever seen and cannot be replicated in Photoshop. Furthermore, the colors would shift and change frequently, similar to the skin of a cuttlefish. I could have stayed there forever. Time does not exist, at least not on the scale that my brain can understand. It felt great to be there. I've never felt better before or after. It wasn't a wonderful feeling like you get from peak experiences in mortal life. It was, for lack of a better phrase, the sensation of unconditional affection. It completely transformed me in an instant. A choice with a question was provided to me from my right side. I didn't notice who or what presented that option. It was a nonverbal exchange. It was familiar to me. You may either stay here or go back. Either way, the result will be the same. I opted to return. What is the question? Why? Is it a good or bad thing that the end will be the same? I'm not looking for an answer to this query. Perhaps my art is the answer. My decision was selfish, but I was not afraid of either option. I had the impression that I was conveying the truth. Some have stated that they returned because they had small children or other responsibilities. I do. I returned because I knew the physical remnants of my life would be difficult for my family to deal with when I died. I didn't want them to feel embarrassed by my disorganized hoarding. I'd been unintentionally selfish for years and could easily see the fact from this vantage point. My family would require far too much time and energy, both physically and emotionally, to digest the wreckage of my physical life. I felt compelled to tidy it up before I died. Grace appeared to me. I found myself curled up in a ball on my knees, right where I'd left off. There was a whistling sound and I was visibly physically converted back into my corpse when this happened. I rose up in this frigid night air and walked back inside, barefoot and fully healthy, if exhausted. My temperature had subsided, but I was hungry and thirsty. There was another time when I felt close to fatigue, and it was similarly after an event classified as noumena, a story for a different time. My level of tiredness from the experience is comparable to how an astronaut who's been in space for a long time must feel when they return to Earth, as if gravity is extra powerful. It seemed as if the entirety of me, both physically and spiritually, weighed twice as much as it generally did. I found my wife and kid in the kitchen, where I made a grilled cheese sandwich and ate 14 of them with a glass of water. I was happy in ways I'd never felt before. I'm filled with genuine joy, ego-free happiness. I was also beginning to grasp that I had actually been somewhere else. I went to sleep. I awoke some hours later to the longest fart I'd ever heard. I was giggling for more than a minute or two as it went on. When I received the signal to end my life, this tube that is my body was entirely drained. The first bite of food of my new existence was making its way from my stomach into my intestines. Amazing and beautiful. I felt exhausted for almost a month, but my psychology was changing so drastically that I wasn't too concerned about my physical condition at first. I returned to work, and my large project was quickly nearing completion. At that point, I had mostly retired from construction and was focusing on embracing the possibility of my second chance to live as a human. What has happened since then has been the focus of several of my blog postings. The majority of it is focused on increasing creativity and empathy. Because of my experience, the following is significant: contentedness, a shift in my culinary preferences, abhorrence of alcohol, absence of anxiety, a lack of ego, control of emotions from a distance. My emotions now inform me rather than becoming me. In general, better luck and intuition use or awareness. A tremendous burst and consistency of creativity. I'm more superstitious rather than worried, as if I'm never alone. On June 14th, 2018, shortly after 9 a.m., I had an emotion that I mistook for joy. I've felt that on time since then. I'd only felt it in a very tempered way until that morning when seeing my daughter learn in real time. Nothing else ever made me happy. I'm feeling it more regularly and strongly now. As the months passed, I came to see everything in a more clearer light than I had previously. I felt, and still mostly feel, as if I'm in sync with the vibration and intention of consciousness, or God, or whichever one chooses to look at the reality that we are all parts of something infinite and not separate from one another and the totality of creation. I don't feel as attached to it in mortal body as I did wherever my consciousness traveled, but I do feel near at times. In my moment of submitting, I would say I was completely transformed. Every day since then, my rivulets of presence and intention have brought me closer to where I was on February 22, 2018. Every day has me focused on the work of what I believe I was given permission to continue living for. To some extent, each day has me focused on preparing for mortal death, slowly and steadily. My existence is as a creative empath, and for the majority of my adult life, I went far from that in pursuit of my ego. I found myself again in what could have been a vision or a near-death experience. I reverted to my 8-year-old self, but without fear and with the wisdom of my previous mistakes. As I move forward, I intend to utilize my energy to help and foster the concept of empathy and the creativity that flows through me, and I believe this is true. My creativity is not my own. I am simply a conduit. Will be my tool to do so. I'm not sure how to appreciate the source of creativity, but I'm grateful for my gift and even more grateful to be gifted with it in the future. These days, I'm producing my greatest work yet. In my daily existence, the experience pervades all I do. With subtle echoes of higher awareness, it influences every action I make. I'm more aware now. I'm not sure if what I went through was a near-death experience. My experience is true in the context of the various sorts of awareness I've encountered throughout my life. The spectrum begins with dreams and progresses to at least one vision I've had, then mortal existence, and now, for me, 1 minute of something I can't explain but know is true and more real than mortal life, less restricted. Another thing that stuck with me in the weeks after my encounter was a peculiar lack of coordination when using my normally excellent fine motor abilities. For a while, I had to concentrate on tasks like handling cutlery and tying shoes because my visual brain wasn't adequately connected to my central nervous system and physical machine. I was thinking stroke, but I'm sure that wasn't the case. I experienced no further stroke symptoms. My reactions have never been faster or more precise, so much so that others notice and are impressed. One theory I came across by chance, I wasn't looking for an explanation, is that when the soul re-enters the body, it takes some time to settle in to every nook and cranny it had previously occupied. A nice analogy would be pulling a sweaty hand from a lined glove and having the lining come out with it. Stuff your fingers back in and try to smooth out the wrinkles as you go. In any case, everything is perfect now.